thank you for joining us today. My name is Destiny Ho. I am a member of the Boston University Center on the Ecology of Early Development, or CEED, and I will be moderating today's session. This webinar will be interpreted in Spanish and Russian. If you wish to hear the interpretation, please take a moment to find the globe on the bottom right section of your screen and select your language of choice. Today's webinar is about classroom experiences in preschool for all, or PFA. We want to take a moment to acknowledge that this webinar will be recorded. We hope you will find this to be an informative and engaging session. Following the presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback, but please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A box throughout the entire presentation. Today's speakers are also joining us from CEED. Please welcome Dr. Stephanie Currington, CEED's Executive Director and a professor at Boston University, and Dr. Dee Addy, a researcher on the team. I'll hand it over to Stephanie.
Thank you, Destiny. As Destiny mentioned, my name is Stephanie Currington, and I am CEED's Executive Director. But before we really dive into today's session, I'd like to spend a little time getting to know more about who's in the room today. So if you would, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat by sharing your first name, your relationship to PFA, and what brought you here today. Awesome. I see some folks chiming in there. Hi, Jennifer. I see my fellow CEED member, Melissa. Nice of you being here to support us. Hi, Lorraine. Shannon. Oh, yes. I'm glad you're curious. We're gonna give a lot of good, information. Glad to see everybody coming in. We're super excited. We'd also like to do a keep them coming. Keep them coming. And we'd also like to do a waterfall activity as a fun way to get to know a little more about each other. So please share something big or small that you are looking forward to this year. Go ahead and start typing, right? But in the chat window, but do not hit send. Do not hit send until I say go. And then we're all going to hit send at the same time. And it's going to be this really beautiful kind of waterfall in the chat. So if you can think of, for those of you who have, thought of something that they would like to share, go ahead and type it up. And we're going to get ready to send. I'm going to count it down. 3, 2, 1, hit send. Yay. I'm looking forward to some sunshine as well. And summer. Yes, and the beach. Especially here. I live in Boston, so we just had the blizzard. Very much looking forward to that. Well, welcome, welcome. Thank you for indulging us in that. We love to know who you are, who's in the room with us, and just getting to know you just a little bit in terms of some things that you're hoping for. There'll be some other times that are interactive throughout where you can share some of your ideas and thoughts as well. So we're gonna, yep. So as Destiny mentioned, we're here today from the Boston University and at CEED. CEED provides early childhood expertise for children and families living further away from opportunity. And we've partnered with Multnomah County Preschool for All to evaluate their preschool program. Here are a few members of our evaluation team as a point of reference. And so you can see all of us there. It's a large group of us who are committed to this work and have been working on it over the last several years. And now this is our agenda for today. So we'll begin with an overview of Preschool for All and its CEED partnership, followed by children's and educators' classroom experiences, PFA's progress towards its equity goals, then some key findings from our PFA evaluation, including strengths and areas for growth. We will end with time to get feedback from community members here today during our question and answer period with Denisa McLean, the new director of preschool and early learning division in Multnomah County. So happy to have you. So to give a little background on PFA for anyone who's unfamiliar, PFA seeks to ensure all 3 and 4-year-old children in Multnomah County have universal access to high quality preschool programs by 2030, especially those facing the greatest barriers to accessing preschool. It is tuition free, it is developmentally appropriate, and with a no suspension or expulsion policy, and it's designed to be culturally relevant and equitable. PFA was designed to gradually increase the number of children served so that by 2030, it is available for free to all interested families in Multnomah County. In the first few years, priority is given to families who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, who have low incomes, which is 350% of the federal poverty level or less. And in the future, this will be raised to 400% of the federal poverty level or less, which allows more families to receive free preschool education. It's also priority is also given to children with developmental delays or disabilities and who speak primary languages other than English. So in the chart, you can see the revised goals of the number of seats PFA sought out to provide each year and the number of seats PFA actually provided for families. And over the years, PFA has exceeded their goals. So as a note, in the next calendar year, 2026 and 2027, PFA expects to provide 4,500 seats. Now, one thing that I want to just make a pause on and some notes is that we are a partner to PFA. PFA has its own data division within the program, and they analyze data related to their numbers, their enrollment, things like that as well. So there might be some slight difference in some of the numbers that we might share today. And this is because we use a specific point of time in a data set of PFA enrollment, not a continuous rolling number that you might see if you're looking at some of the data from the PFA program itself. So now we're going to share some information about the CEED and the PFA partnership. There are 3 goals guiding our research practice partnership. One is to identify what works well and what can be improved in PFA to better support children, families, and the early childhood educators in Multnomah County. The second goal is to make sure racial equity and cultural responsiveness is a priority in PFA. And third is to evaluate how PFA is making a difference in early learning and childcare in the local community. And to identify these goals, we conducted 24 classroom observations at 13 different preschools in the spring of 2024, and each observation lasted about 15 minutes, and teachers led lessons or activities as usual, either with the whole class or a small group of children. We also collected data through surveys in the spring of 2025. We have surveys from 630 family members, 308 educators, and 32 preschool site directors. And so now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dee Dee Addy, who will go over the key findings from our data this year and analyses.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. And before I continue, I'd like to get a sense of your thoughts and perceptions of PFA for those of you who are here today. So there should be a short poll that has appeared on your screen. And we'd like to know, just get a sense, what percentage of families do you think are satisfied with PFA? So you can take a minute just to give your response. And then we will share the results of this poll so everyone can see. And it looks like Most of us will say 90 to 100%, a good amount, also 80 to 89%, 70 to 79%. So it looks like most of you believe that families are satisfied with PFA. And based on what we found, this corroborates your thoughts as well. So we have found that 97% of families report being satisfied overall with PFA. And here are some more specific ways that families appear to be satisfied. So the vast majority say that teachers treat all children fairly, and they also believe that teachers have a good relationship with their children. They feel that their children are learning a lot, and this applies to both academic and social skills. And most families also say their children love school and look forward to it. So overall, these numbers reflect positive experiences in PFA classrooms. And in addition to providing positive preschool experiences, based on our data collection and analysis, PFA has already increased access to preschool, especially for its priority populations. So more specifically, out of the site leaders who completed surveys, 76% report an increase in children with developmental disabilities and differences, and 63% report an increase in children who have not attended childcare before. So both of these numbers fall in line with PFA's goal to increase equity and access to preschool for all families in Multnomah County, and especially for families who typically face the greatest barriers to preschool. And when it comes to teaching children with developmental differences, educators, for the most part, feel supported by the support that they've gotten from PFA, and they also feel confident in their teaching abilities. So in other words, they feel they have received the preparation, the training, the staff support that they need to successfully teach all children and support their individual learning styles. However, site leaders still report some challenges in this area, and some of those specific challenges are difficulty having enough staff members in place who have specialized training or maintaining their desired teacher-child ratios. So while PFA has increased access for children with a range of developmental differences and learning styles and provided teachers with some appropriate tools and resources, there's still some gaps in the level of preparation for site leaders that they feel they still need. And so we also have seen an increase in multilingual learners. And when it comes to these learners or children whose home language is not English, most educators are confident in their abilities. However, almost half still feel at least some occasional difficulty teaching multilingual children, and only about half received specific training in this area. So again, PFA is making preschool more accessible to all families, but the instructional supports have not increased quite as quickly as the number of students. And then another goal of the PFA program, as we mentioned before, is to focus on equity, and then also to create classrooms that are culturally relevant and responsive to the families in Multnomah County. So in other words, classroom spaces, activities, and lessons are intended to reflect the cultural backgrounds of students and also incorporate lessons and activities that focus on cultural diversity and equity. So based on our data collection and analysis, we found some mixed results that relate to cultural diversity and equity. And first, on a positive note, 77% of families who took surveys stated that their child's school incorporates their family's background in lessons and activities. And 67% say social justice and equity-related lessons are used in classrooms. However, during our classroom observations, members of the research and evaluation team saw few learning activities, lessons, or stories about diversity, social justice, or children's home lives. So it's not entirely clear why there's a difference between what the families are reporting and what we on the research and evaluation team are seeing, but it could be that there's differences in how families define diversity, equity, and social justice versus what the researchers define as equity, social justice, and diversity. So we'll need to do a little more research to figure out why that difference exists, but at the very least, based on all the data we've analyzed so far, PFA is incorporating cultural diversity and equity on some level, but there's still some room to grow. So now we'd like to take another poll just to get your thoughts about cultural diversity as well. And we'd like to know, how important is it to have your child's identity heritage and culture represented in the classroom? So you can take a moment again to give your response, and we'll share those results as well. And it looks like 80% feel that it's very important to incorporate identity, heritage, and culture. And a few say not so important, not very important. But based on this, it seems that PFA is kind of on the right track in terms of wanting to center equity to make it responsive to what the majority of families in Multnomah County would like in preschool. So that's encouraging. All right. And we'll move on to our next slide. And this is just a recap now that we've presented an overview of our findings. Another poll that we would like to do is to know whether this information is similar to what you've experienced or heard about PFA. So rather than doing a poll, we actually would just like you to either give a thumbs up or you could give a thumbs down if this matches what you have heard or experienced about PFA. And a question about what part?
Angie, yeah, any part, like in general, the things that you're hearing, are they lined up with what you had expected, or is there something that's sticking out that's a little bit different? And we'll have time at the end to talk, Great.
Okay, so yeah, what we're noticing in our data collection and analysis seems to mirror what you all are hearing on the ground there in Multnomah County. So that also is encouraging from our perspective. And again, as Stephanie mentioned, you can feel free to expand upon these thoughts later in our Q&A panel if you have any other feelings about what you've been hearing or experiencing in relation to PFA. So now we'll jump into some of the key findings related to strengths of PFA. Pardon me. So first, parents are satisfied with their children's experiences in PFA classrooms. And some of the aspects that they appreciate have to do with how much their children are learning, the way that teachers treat all children fairly, and also develop good relationships with their children. And on the part of educators, they value and appreciate the support that PFA has provided in the first years of PFA's rollout. So here you can just see a couple of quotes that capture these sentiments. One from a PFA parent who says, "My son loves going to preschool and the teachers are very professional, caring, and competent." And then we also have a PFA educator who says, "I have seen the benefit of all the trainings we've had gained access to and participated in." So you can see there, again, some of the strengths of PFA. And in addition to these strengths, there are also some key takeaways related to opportunities for growth. First, although educators value the support that PFA has already provided, they still want and need additional and ongoing assistance to meet the needs and strengths of all the children in their classes. So there are particular needs relating to children's developmental differences and also their language backgrounds. And these supports could come in the form of training, coaching, and sufficient staff who have specialized training in these areas. And then we also need a little bit more information about how equity and cultural diversity are understood and incorporated in classrooms. And so we have another quote here from an educator about the additional supports that are still needed. And this educator shares, "We have an overwhelming amount of special needs and English language learners. It's impossible to give every child what they need because they all need something so different." So although the educators want to support all children in PFA, they still do not feel fully or sufficiently prepared to do so. And so that concludes our presentation, the findings from what we have collected and analyzed. And so now we will move into our Q&A session. And you are welcome to share your thoughts, any questions you might have with our panelists who will be joining us now. So we will stop the recording